Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 72 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In this episode, I have an interview with Sheena Cundy, who's a witch, a wife, mother, and musician. She teaches the tarot, spiritual development, and horse riding. She sings and writes songs for her pagan band, Morrigan's Path. She's also the author of a nonfiction book, The Magic of Nature Oracle, and the Witchlit series of novels that include The Madness and the Magic and Bonkers and Broomsticks. Sheena says that she wrote the debut novel in this series to keep out of prison, a straitjacket, and the divorce courts while battling with dodgy hormones during a midlife crisis. You'll get to hear Sheena's fun humor and her reflections on being a creative soon, but first, let me jump into a word from this episode's sponsor as well as my personal update. This podcast is sponsored by Findaway Voices. Findaway Voices is a way for independent authors and publishers to get their works to the widest possible global audience. If you are a member of Findaway Voices and you're using Voices Plus, check your email for the June promotions. They're looking for promotions for June, and the submission date is April 30th. So if you're listening to this, and I'm recording this on April 26th, you only have a few days for the June promo. They're usually doing the promos a couple months in advance because that's what the retailers like. The other important thing you should know about Findaway Voices is Authors Direct, where you can earn 85% of the retail price that you set to sell on your own website through their Authors Direct program. And until now, Authors Direct has been invitation only. I've been lucky enough to be part of that program, and they've only been adding a handful of authors every month, but they're going to be cracking the door open just a little bit more, and they're looking at a few hundred additional applications. They're actually looking at authors who have enrolled in Voices Plus for at least one of their titles, so a great reason to look at Voices Plus. All they're really doing, since they aren't asking you to be exclusive to any one single retailer, because they distribute to all of them. So it's a pretty easy way to get into Voices Plus if you're not already published to a platform directly through ACX to Audible, for example. And that's an easy one. With the exception of one of my titles, I have everything signed up for Voices Plus. Now, there is a sign-up form at blog.findawayvoices.com, and you can learn more about them there, as well as at starkreflections.ca/findaway. If you are an avid early morning Friday listener to the Stark Reflections podcast, I apologize. After a solid year of getting the episodes out, mostly in the evening of Thursday through the RSS feed, usually by midnight at the latest, and then the show notes will go live early on Friday morning, I didn't manage to get it done. Yesterday was an interesting combination of scrambling on getting my tax information together. In Canada, the deadline is April 30th. So scrambling on that. A whole bunch of meetings, as well as a very important event on Thursday, April 25th. I basically took the afternoon off to make sure I got to Hamilton in plenty of time to pick my son up from school so we can go grab something to eat so we could be there early and on time for the 6 p.m. showing of the Avengers Endgame. So my personal enjoyment of hanging out with my son and channeling my own inner 14-year-old took precedence to getting the podcast out. So if you were anticipating waking up Friday morning to the podcast, my apologies for it being about 12 hours delayed. But again, if you're batch listening, like many of my listeners do, this is an annoying part of the podcast because it has nothing to do with you, because you're listening to it sometime in the future, and you're wondering why I'm going on and on about that. But I do have to say, no spoilers for Avengers Endgame for anyone who's listening to this before. If they're a fan and they want to see the movie, But wow, a 3-hour movie, fantastic. I will leave a link to an article that tells you when you could take pee breaks. Although having not taken a single pee break during the 3-hour movie, I have to tell you, I'm glad I didn't miss those scenes, because even though they weren't critical moments, there were still moments, and that's the whole part of the vision, right? As you as an author or the director or writers for the show, there are all these moments that are part of the whole, and a lot of stuff ends up on the cutting room floor. So very satisfying movie. I walked away from that movie. Well, I walked away from the Avengers Infinity War feeling dark and upset and a lot of angst. I walked away from this movie feeling satisfaction. So there, no spoilers. Even though I jokingly, when I left the theater, as we were walking out, I turned to my son and in a loud voice I said, "Wow, I can't believe that every single Avenger died." Obviously in a joking way. That is not a spoiler. Don't worry, I was just farting around. The same way that perhaps Homer in what episode of The Simpsons was walking out of The Empire Strikes Back, and there's all the people in line, and he goes, "Wow, I can't believe that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father," which back then was a huge thing, because remember, this was way before the internet, so it was much harder for spoilers. I think that was one of the big spoilers. And then I remember in the movie The Crying Game, again, this is pre-internet, or the internet was still the information superhighway, and it was just a bunch of connected universities. That was The Crying Game. There's a scene in The Crying Game that was kind of a startling scene at the time. So that was those are two of the big spoilers I can remember. So no spoilers. I was just joking around with that. But again, Avengers, very satisfying film. So for next week, for episode 73, I will probably have pre-recorded it, or I will be recording it on the road. I am leaving on Tuesday, April 30th for Cleveland, Ohio. And Cleveland, Ohio is about a 4.5 hour drive from Waterloo, Ontario, where I am. And I'm going to be going down there to hang out with the folks from Findaway Voices. I'm hoping to also be able to connect with colleagues at Overdrive, because with my work through Draft to Digital, we are working at promoting authors to Overdrive through Draft to Digital. So if you're publishing your books into their catalog there, looking at ways that we can get involved in getting authors spotlit a little bit more. But then obviously hanging out with the folks from Findaway. But the main reason I'm going to be in Cleveland is going to be hanging out with Thorn and Zach Bohannon at the Rock Apocalypse. And that is a conference that they're holding at the Cleveland Rock Museum, which I've never been to, and I'm really excited to be hanging out there. But basically networking with a very small group of authors on this anthology project. Now, Draft to Digital is sponsoring the anthology, and they will be publishing the anthology all in to all digital platforms, all ebook platforms through Draft to Digital. And it's going to be a fun anthology, and it's one of many collaborative projects that Jay and Zach have been involved in. I interviewed them very early on in the podcast. You can find them in an earlier episode. I, of course, can't think of the episode number off the top of my head, but if you go to starkreflections.ca for episode 73, I will put a link to that episode in the show notes. And in terms of the last item for personal updates is I was, as I mentioned in last episode, was recently interviewed by the folks from the Phantom Faction podcast, and episode 38 of that podcast with me chatting with Danny, Dan, and John, the three hosts for the podcast, in a haunted theater, is out. So if you're at all interested in any of the true ghost story books or books on the paranormal that I write, you can check that out there. I will provide a link to the Phantom Faction podcast, episode 38, in the show notes. But that's it for personal update. Let's jump into this wonderful conversation with Sheena. Hey, Sheena, thanks for hanging out with me here today.
Hello, Mark. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me.
So I have to say, because I can see where you're sitting, and you're sitting in this really amazing space. You are in the Treehouse. And that,
I'm in the Treehouse.
And that relates specifically to a really cool YouTube channel, Treehouse TV.
Yeah. We started, I mean, my husband, Shall I go back to the beginning, how the treehouse came to be?
I would love to hear that, yes.
Okay, the story of the treehouse is my husband is very resourceful, I think is probably the nice way to put it. A squirrel in a past life is the other way to put it, because he's a right hoarder. He's got his motorbikes and all machinery and everything all, spilling into the house, and guitars. But anyway, so he said, oh, we've got this beautiful big eucalyptus tree at the bottom of our garden. And he said, I think I'm gonna build around the tree. And I said, are you? And he said, yeah. He said, because the boys, when they were younger, because we've got 2 teenage sons now, but when they were tiny, we used to have a tree house that was above the tree, around the tree at the top. And they used to have a zip line, and what boys are like. But they don't do that anymore. So he said, yeah, I'm going to build a tree. So it's all built out of recycled stuff. I mean, he works at the local marina, because we live on the southeast sort of coastline of the UK.
Okay.
So we're very close to we've got water all around us, and part of the wall of the house, or certainly the floorboards, is an old sleeper that we picked up from the beach. We've got boat windows, portals. It didn't cost anything in currency, in money, but it probably took him about 18 months to build.
Wow.
And I said to him, God, if I don't write anything magical in there, then something, or if magical things don't happen in this place, then something is wrong. But They do, because I use it as it's a therapy room. I do my readings in here. I write in here. I've got a lovely, I don't know if you can see my lovely oak desk in the background.
Right.
I write in here when the weather's good enough, because it's very rustic. There's no heating. It's full of drafts.
Okay.
So it's freezing in the winter.
Okay.
And of course we do the interviews for the Treehouse TV in here. So that was an idea that we had about a year ago, and I just said, I really love promoting other people and interested in other creatives that want to sort of get out a bit more. So that's what we started doing. So I interview sort of other musicians, writers, anybody really that's got a story to tell, got things that they want to put out into the world. And the drummer, mandolin player in our band, he is a videographer, so he does all the filming, which is great, because we don't have to pay him. I just make him lots of, Ian makes him lots of cups of coffee, and we cook him a meal at the end of it. So no, we give him some petrol money, but we have great fun in here. We do, really.
So I've got to figure out how you find people to interview for the Treehouse, and do you want to come into my Treehouse and I can interview you about your creative endeavor? Like, how does that pitch go? How does that conversation
usually? What I do, basically, yeah. I mean, I just we've had a few. The last people that we haven't had anybody in here this year, because I've been trying to get my head down to write. And as you know, there are so many aspects to writing, and then you've got family life, and you can't do it all. So I said that I wouldn't do any interviews for the winter, but that we would continue in the spring. So now we're kind of into the spring.
Right.
But what was
because you're going to have to wear a lot of clothing, because there's no insulation in the winter, right?
Oh, I do, yeah.
There's going to be layers after layers, because everyone's freezing hot cocoa or something.
But the last people that we had in here that I interviewed were a young couple. They were a friend of ours, her son, he's 18, and his cousin, and they're a young sort of acoustic duo. And they came in, and they were the first musicians that came and played in the Treehouse. And they are just, a talented, lovely pair of people. And that was really interesting. But they were the last, just before Christmas they came in.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned playing music in the Treehouse, because I was going to ask you, I said, so you do readings there, you do the Treehouse TV interviews, you do your writing there. I was going to say, do you and the band actually play in the Treehouse as well, or is that in a separate studio?
There's not a lot of room for that, Mark. Well, we probably all get in. There are 6 of us in the band, so it'd be a little bit difficult. You haven't got much elbow room for,
Okay.
No, but we do actually rehearse in the house. We've got quite a big loud living room.
Right.
And we had the band down last week, actually, because we've got a gig this weekend in London. So everybody's sort of spread out all over the country. So it's quite difficult you know, it's quite a job organising everyone to be in one place at one time.
Right.
So, but no, we wouldn't all get in the. We would get in the treehouse, but we wouldn't get much done apart from laughing and, you know, yeah.
So you do vocals with the band, with the group. As the writer, are you also the lyricist?
Yes.
Okay. So
yeah, I write all the songs. I've been writing all the songs. We've been together for about 5 years, and before that, I was in a duo with my husband Ian, who's also in Morrigan's Path. And sorry, I'm going to give you the story of my.
yeah.
I'm just naturally sort of going back now.
Right, of course.
I started writing poetry when I was a sort of an angst-ridden teenager, I suppose you could say.
Okay.
And that was the first thing that I used to write was poetry. And when I met up with my husband, he's been a musician all his life, and he sort of said to me, "These poems are quite good. Why don't you try and put them to music?" So I was like, "Yeah, all right. I can play guitar a little bit, you know, badly." And so that's how it all started. Really, started writing my own songs. Ian was always very supportive and very sort of encouraging, and that helps. You know, if you've got good feedback, if you've got positive encouragement from the start, I think that makes so much of a difference to anybody who's creative, you know, because it then gives you the confidence to keep moving forwards and keep writing. And as you know, as a writer, the more you do it, you know, as in any craft, you know, the only way to get better at any craft is to practice it. And right. And so I now sort of listen to songs that I wrote back in sort of the late 90s, and I think, oh God, did I really write that? And you know, they're a lot better now. They're probably more mainstream now than they've ever been.
Okay.
But yeah, so I love writing songs.
So you guys perform, you do it at fairs, etc. You've got 3 albums out, I believe, right? Like Morgan's Path has at least. Well, I thought I saw 3 albums.
On the Bandcamp page, that's a single. I'll Be Waiting is a single. Okay. Yeah, we've got 2 albums. The last one we brought out about 18 months ago, Beyond the Veil. And we're kind of halfway through recording the 3rd album. So it's a little bit, and it's a little bit like books. You know, you make with a song, we think, well, we used to wait until we got the whole batch ready to bring out as an album. But I said to Ian the other day, you know, we've got about 4 or 5 singles now that we could actually just put up on the Bandcamp page as singles. And then once we've got, you know, maybe sort of 10, 12, we can make an album out of it. But I have to say, with the music, there's never been a very good business head that's gone with the art. It's always been, you know, we just want to get out and play, just want to write the songs. Yes, we get paid for our gigs, but we also do a lot of free gigs, a lot of charity gigs, and it's always been for the love of it. But yeah, so I'm not very, but I'm trying to now, Mark, become more business-minded, because I want to sell some books, you know. I want to be able to have a career as an author.
Of course. Well, that's a great segue, because I wanted to specifically talk to you about your Witchlit novel series. You've got The Madness and the Magic, which came out in March of 2019, and that's book 1 in the series. And then you have Bonkers and Broomsticks, that's book 2, that is due out in May, actually, May 1st, 2019. Yes, the nerves.
The actual pre-order deadline is end of this week. So I keep getting these emails from KDP every day saying to ensure your pre-order is you know, up by the 27th. So I'm thinking, oh my God. So yeah, to wind back, I actually bought out book 1. I was traditionally published by Moon Books, which is an imprint for John Hunn Publishing, back in 2015.
Okay.
And the actual story I wrote as a NaNoWriMo entry in 2012.
Really?
And I wrote it as a remedy for my seriously debilitating menopausal symptoms, as women of my age some women of my age go through, and how I didn't end up in a divorce courts or a straitjacket, I don't know. But anyway, I wrote that as just, and it was semi-autobiographical. I think I found out about Nano about 3 days before the beginning of November, and I thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to see if I can write 50,000 words in 30 days. And I did, but I had to pull out of the ether within about a couple of days. I had no plan, so I thought, I'll do it about what I know, a crazy witch who's in a midlife crisis, and she falls in love with the local guitar playing vicar. And it's really about her ridiculous antics to snare this vicar. And that kind of weaves in and out of another storyline, which is to do with her daughter, who gets unexpectedly pregnant, and then has this awful, serious sort of horse riding accident. Their lives kind of, those stories weave together, and it's pretty much lives up to its title. It's kind of quite mad and quite magical, but yeah. So I had great time writing that, and it was serialized on this pagan blog for about 12 months, and the publisher of the blog said, of the imprint, said to me, if this is any good, we'll serialize it and you can put it up a chapter at a time, which was great for me as a writer, because having written that first draft for Nano, I had no idea about editing or rewriting, and it just I had a chapter. I put up a chapter every month, so I had a month to rewrite sort of about 2,000 words, 4,000 words, which isn't a lot, but when you're starting out, it's a lot of words to try and polish up. And by the end of that year, he then said to me, there's no guarantee that we'll publish you, but you can have a go, and they did publish me, which I was very grateful for. It was validation at the time for me, but as you know, same old story. You don't get a lot of help from the publishers, apart from getting the book printed and getting it edited and getting a cover done and getting it physically out into a few shops, not many shops. But as I've realised now that I published my own book, I am so grateful for all the work they did do, because you just wouldn't realise just how many skill sets there are involved in publishing yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's one that you took. You took that when you were finished with it, and then you re-released it yourself.
Well, back in 2000, so that was 2015. In 2016, I signed up for a self-publishing course with Mark Dawson on the SPF 101 course. And sorry, I've got a wasp that's just accompanied me. No, it's one of the tree bees. They'll be hiding under the nesting under the floorboards. I signed up for the SPF 101 course. I thought, I'm seriously going to do something about self-publishing now. I want to, because I've been an indie all my life. We've been indie publishing our music, for 20 years. So I've got that kind of indie spirit, and so I signed up for this course, and within about a few weeks of signing up for the course, they put out on social media, if anybody that had signed up wanted to go and do, they were going to do some filming tutorials, testimonials in London. And I thought, I'm going. I hadn't even attempted to even start the first module in the course, but I thought, I'm going to this film. So I went and I met Mark Dawson and James Blatch and John Dyer, and they're lovely. And I had a coffee with Mark, and I said to him, this is what I'm doing. This is what I've got so far. I've just been published once, and I've now written the sequel to this first book. But I haven't really got any control over that first book now. If I publish this second book myself and keep the first book traditionally published, and he said to me, can you get your rights? He said, you need to get your rights back. He said, and then when you get your rights back off that first book, self-publish it, and then you've got full creative control over it. So that's kind of what I've done, and it's taken me, taken me 3 years or 2 years from then. But you know, as you know yourself, when you've got a family, you've got other things going on, we've got the music as well. You know, everything has to happen when it's supposed to.
Right.
I can't push things too much because I do have so many sort of plates spinning. So
Right.
but yeah, so I've managed to I got the rights back at the end of last year, just before Christmas. And actually then I had a chat with you at the beginning of this year, and you said to me, yeah, self-publish that book, get it up on, you know, get it up and out there, put a pre-order link for the second book, which I've had finished.
Right.
And that's what I've done.
Oh, excellent.
And then get in touch with you, and you said you'd have me on the podcast, so here I am.
There we go. That's very exciting.
I've just brought you up to speed, Mark.
Well, we've gone back through the history and back into it. So because you do so many different creative things, how do you divide your time? Is it a certain amount of time that you're working on music projects with the band? Is like writing? Do you schedule that? How do you do that? And as well, because of the readings that you do, how do you build all those different things into your daily, weekly, monthly work schedule?
Okay, it's very organic, the music and the readings, and because I'm a spiritual healer as well, so I'm a therapist, so I do healings too, and they're very sporadic. You know, I like, for example, I had 4 readings a couple of weeks ago in 1 week, and I haven't had any for 2 weeks. That's just the way it goes. Okay. Again, I'm not particularly business-like, putting myself out there. It's really word of mouth, really, it's happened for me. With the music, so that kind of runs along daily, weekly, monthly. The music, you know, that's always been organic. I've always worked inspirationally with the music. If I've never actually said I'm going to sit down and write a song, although actually, having said that, the last song that I wrote, I did say I'm going to write a song for Imbolc, which is the Witches' Wheel of the Year. Imbolc is a pagan Celtic festival at the beginning of February, right. And the goddess, which is symbolised around that festival time, is the goddess Bridget, and another word for her is Bridie. So I wrote Bridie's song just before Imbolc. That was more intentional, but all the other songs, really, they come as they're meant to, and that's been very organic. But the writing, the book writing, especially now that I'm publishing myself, I do have to make, as you know, schedule time for that. So I get up really early in the morning. I get up at sort of 6. So I'm writing for 2 hours, or as I've been publishing for the last month, you know, doing all the jobs that you've got to do. Right. I must admit, I haven't actually written any new words for a month, and I'm getting a bit panicky about that, because I'm thinking I mustn't lose my writing habit. But sometimes you know, I'd never published myself before on Amazon, and the whole process of formatting, editing, you know, doing the book description, the keywords, the metadata, everything, it all takes time. Getting the cover sorted out, that's right. been a real experience for me, just working with a graphic designer, because she's the only person really that I've paid any money to. Apart from that, I'm editing myself, I'm formatted myself, until hopefully the books can start to bring in some kind of revenue. Then right. I'm DIYing it, you know. But yes, I do put in time. I do have to schedule time. And sometimes with the writing, especially recently in the last month, I've been just, you know, working in the evenings, because that's what you have to do, isn't it? Because we've got 24 hours in a day. There is plenty of time. I don't, you know, but and I'm just as guilty of panicking about lack of time. We're running out of time. Oh my God, there's nothing worse than that horrible feeling that you're running out of time. But actually, if you really think about it, there is plenty of time. You just have to, and I have become more organised, because when you've got so many things going on, you have to be organised. You have to schedule time. Right. Otherwise, you do end up running out of it. Yeah,
for sure. Now, you also talk about being a bit organic and not as business minded, and yet I do know that you've linked the launch of the new book with the Witches' Wheel of the Year festival. Is that for some of the launch activities that you're going to be doing in early May?
Yeah. But Bonkers and Broomsticks book 2 is coming out May the 1st, which is Beltane, which is May Day.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's another pagan. There's 12. There's 8 festivals throughout the pagan Celtic wheel, which is the witches' calendar. And Beltane is kind of just approaching summer. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that was very strategic, obviously, that you wanted to time those things together. Do you do a music touring at the same time? Do you work that in to like the book launch, the music? Do you bring those together at
not
all?
not consciously,
Okay.
but, we are gigging around. May the 4th we're gigging. The other girl, the other vocalist that's in the band, she's just joined. She's a backing singer. She's actually having a hand fasting, which is a witch's wedding, a pagan wedding in a field, which is what Ian and I had 10 years ago. And we're playing at her wedding. We're playing at the hand fasting, so that'll be at round Beltane. And I'm going to be brave and put another pre-order in with my submission for the book 2 this week. When I publish book 2, I'm going to put another pre-order in for book 3, which I haven't quite finished yet, but I've nearly finished the first draft of it. So, but this time, Mark, I'm going to give myself the full 90 days.
Yes.
Because, it's just, I only gave myself 2 months for this pre-order, and it soon goes, doesn't it? Before you know it, it
slips away on you.
Yeah.
That's so. You had mentioned hanging out with James and John and Mark, self-publishing Formula, the folks. But you'd also mentioned to me that you are going to be going to another sort of gathering of writerly minds. 20 Books Edinburgh is coming up, and you're going to be attending that.
Yes, I know. I'm so excited. I've been thinking about this. I've been, dreaming about it, you could say, because I still dream. For ever since because I'm in the 20 Books group on Facebook, but I'm a bit of a lurker. I have to admit to being a bit of a lurker in that book, that group. Although I do run a couple of my own groups.
Well, there are 20,000 plus people in there. Most of the people are lurking. What?
There are 30,000 people.
40,000 now? I can't keep track of it, but
I know. But I follow the Michael Anderley and Craig Martell quite a lot, quite regularly. I listen to their anything their podcasts or anything that's on YouTube. I've been doing this for the last sort of 2 or 3 years. Since I signed up on the self-publishing course. I go out for walks with my dogs daily, and I just stick my earphones in and just listen to podcasts. That's what I do, and I think, because I think when you want to learn, and there is so much to learn about indie publishing, when you want to learn, you're like a sponge, aren't you? And you just kind of absorb, but through osmosis, through audible osmosis, I think I've absorbed hopefully some knowledge. But yeah, the 20 books, the whole kind of ethos, the whole kind of philosophy of the 20 books has always fascinated me. I don't know if I could, but actually, I released that first book 6 weeks ago now. I'm publishing at the end of this week. It won't be 6 weeks till the next book, but I want to build some momentum. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to sort of produce at that kind of speed. I think you have to find your own speed, your own sort of momentum with it. But so I'm and last week I looked on the 20 Books thing, and they'd got like an event page for Edinburgh, and I thought, that would just be fantastic to go. But I couldn't even begin to imagine being able to afford it. So I borrowed the money. And I borrowed the money, and I thought, well, hopefully I'm going to learn a few things, learn how to sell some books by going. And I put sent Craig a message and said, is this still, are there any tickets left? And apparently he was closing it down the following day. So I managed to get in. And then they folded registration. So I'm going for the whole week. I'm going to do the writing retreat, because they've got like 2 days of writing before the weekend conference. And they got the weekend conference, and they got 3 days of writing after that. And I mean, already I'm just looking at other people that are posting, and they're already planning writing books in those 5 days. And I'm thinking, writing a book in 5 days? You know, these people have their fingers on fire. I'll be crashing now in buckets of cold water. I can't believe that I'm going to be sitting with those kind of people. But I'm hoping that, you know, some of that kind of energy and that, you know, drive is going to rub off on me, and that I will be able to benefit from it. I'm sure I will, because I think whatever field you're in, if you're with people that are doing something that are further down the road than you are, you know, if they can sort of look back and say, well, you know, this is, then that's brilliant. I think you've got to be with people that are already doing what you want to do. You know, that's the way to learn and improve, and to you know, and hopefully hang on to their shirt tails.
Well, I think being at I was at the last 20 Books Vegas, and again a much larger group there, I believe, but you will be inspired and impressed, and again, you'll be with your people, you'll be with other creators, and you'll be learning, you'll be sharing, and there's this great even the non-programmed content, the hallway conversations, the people you sit beside that you never were expecting to meet. There's all of these amazing benefits that come from a gathering like that you can't even plan. You know, so that's going to be great.
I think also, yeah, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. And it's about being with people in the flesh, you know, physically, because yes, the internet is wonderful. The global World Wide Web is amazing for networking. And I've met some wonderful, and, you know, have some wonderful sort of relationships with people in sort of all over the world. But there is no comparison. It's a bit like, you know, I'm a performer and I love being out performing live. Yes, I love recording. I love working in a studio. And it's all good practice, but you can't beat actually gigging. You can't beat being on a stage and engaging with an audience, and that interaction, you know, and bouncing off that energy, that live energy. And you know, it's like, you know, when I spoke to Mark Dawson, when I spoke to you at the beginning of the year, they were I know we haven't met in the flesh, but that was that one-to-one sort of interaction. You know, you need it, I think, with people. Because otherwise these online courses, you know, they can all become a little bit sterile. It's all about being, you know, in front of a screen, and you have to have tremendous self-discipline, I think, don't you, if you're going to just work on your own, you know.
For sure.
But occasionally, yes, and I said to my husband at the beginning of this year, I need to get out this year and meet other authors, you know, because I don't really know that many. I know a young lady who's in the next village. I actually had her in the Treehouse. I interviewed her in the Treehouse last year. She's another indie author that's just publishing herself. So that was really interesting. But apart from her, I don't really see any other authors, you know. Lots of musos, because that's our life, you know. We've got lots of musician friends, but I don't really know that many authors. And I feel like I'm kind of seriously diving into the deep end by putting myself into the 20 books Edinburgh camp. So see how we get on. I'll let you know.
Well, don't worry. There's plenty of authors there who will help keep you afloat and buoy you in the water.
Yeah.
So that's one of the great things. Is that as you know from the online community, it's about supporting one another. It's about lifting each other up. It's about scaling the mountain in your own way to the top, and cheering each other on. So I think that'll be great.
There's so much I've got to learn. You know, I'm for me at the moment, it's the genre thing. You know, what category do I put my book in? Where does this sit in the whole sort of, you know, genre scale?
Well, because you've got humor, you've got paranormal, you've got pagan, you've got a combination, right? So there may be a readership of people who enjoy women's contemporary humor that would love it, but they
Yeah.
maybe are not familiar with, well, I've never read about witches before, or something like that. So there's this opportunity for this great Venn diagram of different audiences coming to enjoy it. So yeah, there'll be lots of authors there who are writing in maybe similar genres or urban fantasy or something like that you'll probably get a lot of ideas from them as well.
I hope so, because from what I've learned so far, initially you think, oh, I want to be able to, I want as many people to enjoy this as possible, and you think,
Right.
oh, keep it broad, but actually the more you narrow your niche down,
Sure.
don't you? I think the more you target your audience, and that is what I need the help with. That's what I need the help with, because I think it's the same for all authors, no matter how long somebody's been doing it for. Everyone is still focused on where am I going to find my readers, or where are they going to find me? How can I connect with them? And I think that's where the internet is a fantastic thing, because just doing what we're doing at the moment, it's wonderful, isn't it? Being able to sort of chat with somebody across the world. And I love video, and that's why I work with video a lot. I do plan to do more little sort of impromptu videos with my phone in the treehouse,
right.
because I've got some oracle cards which I self-published a few years ago, and I use them with my reading. So I'm thinking about maybe doing a little bit of treehouse magic sort of TV, just with my own oracle cards and something like that. But I've got loads of ideas. But yeah, it's just really targeting your audience, and yeah, that's the big thing, isn't it, really, for any writer?
Yeah,
really.
Exactly. So now that we've given the listeners a taste of all the different creative pursuits that you engage in, now that we've got them intrigued and wanting to check out more, where can they find out more about you, and find out more about your books, find out more about your music, find out more about the therapies that you do and the readings, as well as the Treehouse TV talks, like all the different things that you offer? Where can people find you?
SheenaCundy.com is my website, so that's the hub.
Okay.
And from there you can find me on social media. I mean, Treehouse TV is my YouTube channel. I've just started a Witchlit podcast. Well, it's not really a podcast as such, it's more of a YouTube show. We call it a podcast. Right. With another indie author, because I run a Witchlit group on Facebook with 4 other indie Witchlit authors. And Wendy Steele and I have just started our own sort of little podcast, because we just want to get Witchlit out there, because Witchlit is chicklit but with witches,
Yeah.
And I think that, like as you say, there's a lot of elements to the genre that there's a lot of people. I mean, my husband really enjoys it. I've got people that aren't pagans, that aren't witches, that aren't magically minded, that have enjoyed the story. Right. So I think that, it's definitely something that will attract. But so I run the Witchlit group. Sorry, you were asking about where else you can find me. So, and we're bringing out an anthology. I'm publishing that off of Treehouse Magic, my little Treehouse Magic publishing logo. Okay. We're publishing that. We've been running the group for a couple of years, and we've got 27 entries, short stories, poems, essays, and I'm going to publish that on my KDP bookshelf. So and that's coming out at midsummer. So that's my next that's an ongoing project as well. That I've said that I'll publish it. So why do I say these things?
Because you can't turn off. Well, you can't turn off the creative spirit. You can't.
You know what? Since I've been in my sort of mid-40s onwards, I've gone through that kind of, whole menopausal midlife crisis thing. I've never been so creative. Never. And I say to people, don't worry about getting older, because, and I think it's the same for men as well. Okay, women, you get past childbearing age, and you what do you do with all that creative energy? Right. We've got so much of it, and all of us, and it's just finding it, trusting that it will find its own expression, and then when you have that expression, whatever format you can produce in, go for it. And I think that, like I said earlier, you can find the time, because we're all unique. We've all got our own gifts, and if we can just hone those gifts and then share them, and that's what the marketplace is for, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, exactly.
But it'd be nice to make a living out of it, Mark. That's what I really want to do.
For sure, for sure. That is the dream of many. Following your passions and exploring the creative spirit and actually being able to live off of that is fantastic. Sheena, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It was a blast. That's been a pleasure, Mark. I've really enjoyed it. I hope I haven't waffled on too much. No, it was a pleasure. It was almost like I was in the treehouse with you, because I'm surrounded by wood and paper. Oh, are you? Yeah. I like there. From overseas. There is a lot of wood there, isn't there? Yeah, there you go. So we're both in our own little tree houses here. Yeah. If you ever come to the UK, you must come. We must do an interview. I'd love to do that. That would be a lot of fun. It looks like a really magical place. It is, and England's not very big, so we're 60 miles from London. So nice and easy. Not like this sprawling Canada. So. Oh, I'd love to go to Canada though. That's definitely on my bucket list. Excellent. When I start selling these books. There we go. Thanks a lot, Sheena. Thanks, Mark. Cheers. I wanted to reflect back on one of the cool things that Sheena said in the interview, and it was a little thing, but it stuck out with me in an important way, especially because it reminded me of a conversation that I'd had last week. And this was, she'd mentioned the importance of having good feedback and encouragement in your creative endeavors, the confidence to keep moving forward and to keep writing and to keep practicing. And it's so critical in a writer's career, and we're such fragile beings, we're such fragile creatures that just having a little bit of positive feedback or encouragement can go a huge way. Something for us to remember when we're talking with other creatives is, we're trying to help each other out. So often we're sharing things in which we can help them improve. But it's also okay as you're providing that constructive criticism and the feedback to help someone else become better at their craft, at the business of writing, whatever, to acknowledge the things they've done well. And the reason this stuck out with me is I had been listening back to episode 38 of the Phantom Faction podcast, and it was an interesting conversation because it's mostly about ghosts, but I don't know how I got off onto this topic, but I often go on tangents, as often happens in conversations. And I had reflected on, it must have been the story I had written in grade 10 or grade 11 English in high school. And I remember, probably because it was talking about the horror novel I, Death, and how it stemmed back to this 1,000-word story I had written. And I ended up talking about a teacher I had, Gary Furman, who taught English at Levack District High School, and he had a free writing exercise that he would do. And what this was once a week for about an hour in a particular English class, he would do free writing. And all it really was you had a sheet of paper, and you had an hour to do whatever you wanted, write anything you want. You could just doodle your name. You could draw stick figures. You could play tic-tac-toe with your neighbor. You could write poetry. You could write a reflection or thoughts about something like an article. You could write a story. You could do whatever you wanted. All you had to do was turn in the piece of paper, and you got graded either full marks or nothing. So if you didn't turn anything in, you got nothing. And again, could just be a doodle. Could just sign your name and you're done. And that was free writing. And I love that class, and I love taking advantage of that because I wrote some fun stories, some of which ended up getting rewritten and published later. Obviously, one of them turned eventually, many years later, turned into the novel I, Death from the character I had created in that class. But I remember it was a comment, and it was a small thing. And this was about the fact that, I always wrote, Twilight Zone-ish, eerie, freaky, kind of strange fiction. I call it horror, but it's not horror in the traditional horror movie, Jason, slasher, Halloween, Michael Myers type slasher film. It was more the unsettling, strange, and eerie occurrences, like The Outer Limits, like The Twilight Zone. And all of my fiction had that. And I enjoyed writing that stuff, and my mom, God bless her, but my mom would always say, well, why can't you write a nice story like a romance story? And nobody got me. Nobody understood. Not many people really got what I was doing and why these types of stories were important to me. But when I handed in the short story I Death, which is basically Peter O'Malley is a teenager, an angsty teenager, as we all were. Sometimes we still are angsty teenagers, even as I'm approaching 50. And he's upset because his girlfriend dumped him, and everyone around him is dying, and he believes that he has a death curse and that it's channeled through his eyes. So he, at the end of the short story, which is kind of a suicide note, he stands and he looks at the mirror. And he says, I'm going to stand there and look at myself in the mirror for as long as it takes, because he wants to take his own life. And that's kind of the 1,000-word story that I wrote in this free writing class, and I handed it in. And when I got it back, because Mr. Frum would actually see what we did and read what we did, and he would comment on it. And he wrote the comment at the very bottom, and I still have it in a file. And staring back at him was the Twilight Zone. And it was a small thing, a minor comment that a teacher, a mentor to me, made that had a significant impact, because in that line, in what he wrote on that story, was an acknowledgement that he understood what I was doing. He understood the kind of fiction that I was all about. It wasn't his cup of tea, of course. He was a teacher who got me involved in Hamlet, which I refer a lot to my love for Hamlet and Shakespeare in the novel I Death, as a lot of Peter's teenage angst is channeled through my own experiences. He also got me into Henry David Thoreau and stuff like that. So it wasn't his cup of tea, but he was letting me know that he understood, and that was critical. I did get the chance to send him an email as an adult later on, thanking him for the influence that he had on my life, and particularly the value of those free writing exercises. And again, today, I'm acknowledging Gary Furman, English teacher from Levack District High School in the 80s, on the impact that he had, the positive impact that he had on my life. And so I'm encouraging you as creatives that if you're working with other creative people, to remember that even those small things that you do can have a very positive impact. And also, if there were people who had a positive influence on you, like Gary Furman had on my passion for writing and understanding what I was up to with my strange fiction, if you have the opportunity, it never hurts to reach out and let them know how important they were in your creative endeavors. It never hurts to share a little bit of love, a little bit of kindness, a little bit of recognition and respect for people who've had that influence on you. And chances are, if you've taken the time to provide feedback to other creative people, the influence that you may have on other people. Well, that's it for this episode of the Stark Reflections podcast. I want to thank you for listening to the podcast. I want to thank all the patrons who are supporting the podcast on patreon.com/starkreflections. Your contributions to the show help me with the equipment that I continue to purchase in order to upgrade the show. They also are things that I'm funneling back into in terms of the prizes. And remember, it is the 26th as I'm recording this and releasing this of April. And you have until April 30th to comment on episode 70 regarding what book you'd love to escape into the most, or what fictional character you would go into the book to save, as Elena does, as we talk about in episode 70, as well as episode 71, the chance to win a story bundle of books for writers. Those prizes are money that I'm funneling back into the community thanks to the generosity of the patrons, because I love to pay it forward and I love to share and support other creatives in their work. A couple comments from episode 70, which I thought were great, is Chad Boyer said, definitely would love to slip into John Ringo's There Will Be Dragons Before the Fall. Basically, no more and everything is at your fingertips. The perfect Lotus Eater Chill Society. And the secondary character I would love to save would have to be Chewbacca in Vector Prime. It was an awesome death scene, but I think it was just done for shock factor. He had so many more years to live and be awesome. Now, Chad's talking about Chewbacca, not in the movies, if you're familiar with them, but in the previously existing novels that had been written over the decades after the first few Star Wars movies. That's what he's talking about. And other comment was from Juliet Fisher, who said, I just listened to this episode, an awesome number 71. She says, I am also a batch listener too. Joanna Penn is the only one I try to keep up with because of the long, valuable introductions. Yes, you're right. The long, valuable introductions are awesome. She also says the flip side is that if I'm busy and can't make it for a few weeks, then that podcast feels dated. She said, I still listen to you guys, though. I always think of you both in the same breath because of your Kobo ad reads. Well, I'm honored to be thought of in the same breath as Joanna at any time and for any reason. And Juliet says that the books I most want to escape into are CJ Box's Joe Pickett series. All the other worlds I read from are pretty horrifying. I don't want to go there. I would most like to save all the dogs from A Dog's Purpose, but especially the police dog. I want to cuddle her and tell her how valuable and beautiful her life was. I can't read dog stories at all to my daughter anymore because I just start to cry. You know what I love? Thanks, Juliet, and thanks, Chad, for these comments. So far, you guys are in the running to both get a copy of the book from Danny Bell, and I'll be reaching out to you. I mean, unless there are other comments, in which case I have to throw you guys into a draw, and then two people will get those. But what I love about these comments is they're pointing out books that sort of make you curious to want to check out, and isn't that exciting, and isn't that sort of a feedback thing that you're leaving, which is kind of related to the reflection? Well, that's it for my comments. If you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend that you think would find it valuable, or feel free to leave a review or tweet and share it. I'm at Mark Leslie, and love to hear from folks and what they think about the various episodes, even if you aren't commenting. So that's it for episode 72. I'm looking forward to catching up with you again next week in episode 73. So until then, here's wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.